by the President of the United States to proclaim the independence of the Philippines as a separate and self-governing nation.
This is a short documentary of the evolution of the Philippine Constitution prepared by Group 2. Before we start with our topic, let us first find out about the Philippine Constitution. Revolves around three separate and sovereign yet interdependent branches: legislative, executive, and judiciary. Legislative is authorized to make laws, alter and repeal them through the power vested in the Philippine Congress. This institution is divided into the Senate and the House of Representatives. Executive, composed of the President and the Vice President, who are elected by direct popular vote and serve a term of 6 years. The Constitution grants the President an authority to appoint his cabinet members. These departments form a large portion of the country's bureaucracy. Judiciary is made up of a Supreme Court and lower courts. The judicial branch holds the power to settle controversies involving rights that are legally demandable and enforceable, determining whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction on the part and instrumentality of the government. The Malolos Constitution. The political constitution of 1899, or Constitución Política de 1899, was the first Philippine Republic.
Es maravilloso porque reproduce la figura movible al mismo tiempo que emite el sonido de la voz.
The Malolos Constitution was promulgated on 1899 during the fight for independence from Spain. It established a republican form of government with three co-equal branches. Executive power was vested on the President of the Republic. However, the Constitution was never fully implemented across the Philippines. The 1935 Constitution. Following Spain's defeat during the Spanish-American War, Spain ceded all its sovereignty over the Philippines to the United States. Through the Treaty of Paris of 1898, the U.S. acquired the Philippines from Spain for $20 million. On 1898, the U.S. started its entry in the Philippines. On 1901, the U.S. Congress passed the Philippine Organic Act, the Philippine Commission as the upper house composed of Americans, and the Philippine Assembly as the lower house composed of Filipinos. The Philippine Organic Act of 1902 also included a Bill of Rights for the Filipinos. After several years, the U.S. Congress passed the Jones Law on 1916. The Jones Law of 1916 gave Filipinos more hold in the government. It changed the setup of the legislative branch in the Philippine government under America. It also changed the Philippine Assembly as the House of Representatives to be a lower house and the Philippine Commission as the Senate of the Philippines to be the upper house. Through the Jones Law of 1916, both the Senate of the Philippines and House of Representatives first elected their officials. On 1934, the U.S. Congress passed the Tidings-McDuffie Law. Although not recognized as a constitution, the Tidings-McDuffie Law paved the drafting of the formal constitution of the country. The Tidings-McDuffie Law also provided a 10-year transitionary period and a date for Philippine independence. The 1943 Constitution. During the World War II, the Japanese invaded the Philippines.
The Japanese invasion of the Philippines was conducted on schedule.
This constitution was a Japanese-sponsored Second Republic of the Philippines. It was recognized as legitimate and binding only in Japanese-controlled areas of the Philippines, but was ignored by the United States government and the Philippine Commonwealth government in exile. Filipino collaborators who were called the Kapisanan sa Paglilingkod ng Bagong Pilipinas o Kalibapi was an active guerrilla movement continued to resist the Japanese occupation. The Japanese forces were finally defeated by the Allies in 1944, and this constitution was only short-lived. The Philippine independence was eventually achieved on July 4, 1946.
When, after 48 years of American sovereignty, the men and women of the Philippines received their independence. Manuel Roxas, newly elected to the presidency, takes the oath of office as a new era of prosperity dawns for the gallant people of the Philippines.
And there you have it. The Philippines had gained independence in the ashes of victory.